What players could the Cowboys show some interest in next week in free agency? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your
Locked
daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
On. Locked on. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, how's it going today, sir?
Happy Friday. I'm glad to be here before the weekend. We got a whole bunch of questions yesterday, and we ended up talking about who got through two of them. So I think we both felt a little bit guilty about that. So we're going to try to clean up things a little bit today here on Friday and finish the week strong.
Yeah, so let's jump right into the questions. First question from Poncho wants to know, what are some rumblings you're hearing about the Cowboys in free agency? We should mention next Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern time, the tampering period opens, which is basically free agency. So starts next week. What players or positions could you see the Cowboys going after in free agency?
Well, I think we all are very familiar with the kind of process that the Cowboys go through, right? It's a lot of wait and see early on in the free agent period, and then it usually waits until the second or third wave to start kind of plugging in holes. I think the only difference this year is that we may see one or two of these positions get plugged a little bit earlier, and I would say specifically wide receiver, right? Like we've already heard the talk. It's already kind of in the zeitgeist a little bit about the Cowboys' interest in Odell Beckham Jr. Obviously, that extends all the way back to last season when they potentially were looking into signing him at the end of the year for a run. And that hasn't changed since free agency has begun again. He has a workout scheduled for this afternoon to kind of just show teams where he is and his health. The Cowboys did not specifically say that they were going to be there, but I'm going to go ahead and probably suggest that they will be there. And I think that is going to obviously be the kind of rumbling that we're hearing. I would also mention that there was a report yesterday by Mike Fisher from SI.com that they are more, and this is not surprising at all to me, that they seem to be more interested in trying to sign Odell Beckham Jr. in a free agent deal than to try to trade for DeAndre Hopkins, which, I mean, I think is just simply a function of not wanting to give up picks. But outside of that, we haven't heard a ton of other free agent kind of nuggets, or at least I haven't. I mean, unless you've got some off the top of your head.
Well, let's start with Odell. I think all things being considered, if Hopkins and Odell were both available in free agency, the Cowboys would have more interest in Hopkins. Just because he's been healthier. We talked about this yesterday, but because Odell is a free agent and doesn't cost a pick to give up, and you can structure a deal however you want to, you're not tied to $17 million a year like Hopkins is, that probably is more appealing. We'll see if that gets done. As for other positions, I mean, we could go through it. Like, they're going to sign a backup quarterback. I don't know who it's going to be. There's a lot of names out there, but I can guarantee you they are going to be sniffing around the backup quarterback market because they loved having Cooper Rush last year. But how much sense does Cooper Rush make in a different offense this year? I don't know. Plus, there's also a lot of other options out there. Like, I'll give you some of the quarterbacks that are scheduled to become free agents. We've got Sam Darnold. We've got Andy Dalton, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett, Teddy Bridgewater, Baker Mayfield, Gardner Minshew, Marcus Mariota, Taylor Heineke. Like, it's a pretty deep backup quarterback market.
It's a nice list, honestly, of backup quarterbacks. So I definitely think that's a position to look at. You and I kind of kicked around the idea of them potentially looking at a guard, to kind of fill things in a little bit.
Which we should talk about because I did tease it yesterday, right?
Oh, yes, that's right. I forgot that everyone else got teased and I got satiated. All right, please.
So, all right. Connor McGovern is a free agent. I think the belief is that Tyron Smith is going to come back, which means Tyler Smith is going to play left guard. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys want a better insurance policy at left guard in case Tyler Smith has to go back out the left tackle. So, what are your options? Pro Football Focus has Connor McGovern projected at 2 years, $6 million. I think that's a possibility. But what about Will Hernandez, who is training in Dallas right now? He's been working out with Duke Manyweather. He's been working out with Terrence Steele and working out with Tyler Smith, only 27 years old. And if the Cowboys want one of those bigger, more powerful left guards, I think Hernandez makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think all those things kind of add up pretty nicely. I mean, just to keep kind of even go further back, if you guys remember back when Will Hernandez was in the draft, part of the reason that we thought that the Cowboys might end up taking him is because he was working out with all those guys back then.
Yeah.
You know, he was working out with Tyron Smith. He was working out with Zach Martin. They clearly had some kind of rapport. I don't remember. There was some kind of social event that happened during the draft season that they all showed up.
Well,
together.
I think it was Tyron Smith and Zach Martin and Will Hernandez was with them, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think that there's something there. And I think that both of those options are good options for kind of filling in what is now going to be a very important backup guard position because of what you just discussed. But before the equation was, all right, we're Tyron Smith. We love having you, but you're going to be out for a couple days, a couple games. So we know that we're going to need a solid backup left tackle solution to figure that out. Guess what? Good news, guys. That's been solved. You got another T Smith that can kick outside to left tackle if you need him to, and from guard, and that's great. Problem now becomes, what happens when Tyler kicks out to left tackle from left guard? Who plays left guard? Obviously, in the past, it was Connor McGovern. That was obviously the starter for multiple games. Maybe you bring him back in that same sort of role, maybe in a reduced role a little bit as a swing backup interior guy who can continue to play fullback for you if you want to do that stuff. Or maybe what you do is you go out and get a little bit better of a run blocking left guard in Hernandez, someone who can physically move guys off the ball. You know, the situations, I think both of these guys kind of fit, but they're both very kind of different guards. So I think the question will be, you know, looking at Solari and his preferences in the offensive line. Does he want to bring back someone like Connor McGovern, who at least knows a portion of the system that they did last year? Or is it time to kind of move on, see if they can get some fresh blood in here, maybe get somebody who, you know, the running game won't drop off like a cliff when Tyler Smith has to kick outside to left tackle to play for Tyron Smith.
And the only other position that I think we should mention that the Cowboys could look for outside free agents is defensive tackle, right? Like maybe they are interested in bringing in a Dalvin Tomlinson at $10 million a year. I kind of doubt it, but that's kind of the higher end. But I could see that being interested in like somebody like Ashawn Robinson, who's only 28 years old and is a run defender, right? Puna Ford or Greg Gaines, the nose tackle in from Los Angeles. So
yeah,
I could see them kind of sniffing around that market a little bit.
The only other position I would throw out there, just if the fit was right and the price was right, it would be nice to have to be able to walk into the draft without having to draft a cornerback, you know, without having to feel like you felt obligated to. And then that way, and this is a strategy that I love to employ, is that if you can figure out a way to fill the need before the draft, or at least get comfortable with the need before the draft of, especially in a draft. Let me back up. If you can fill the need of a position in the draft that is deep, then suddenly, if you don't need like a cornerback this year, there's tons of corners. If you actually fill that need before you go into the draft, suddenly every cornerback picked above you is helping your team because they're pushing down players that you need to use. So I think there is value. Sometimes, you know, the thought process is there's tons of corners. Just let's clear out our cornerback room and then let's get some pickings of this. That is a strategy. Another way to look at it is there's tons of corners. If we fill our need, then that will push down a lot of these other players that we can draft, and we can get them for a song because we're not having to wait on a corner and forced to be picked at one of these corners.
And the good news is there are a lot of those corners. Like if you're not looking for a number one or maybe even necessarily number two corner in free agency, you can find those guys fairly cheap. Like I'm looking at PFF corners that are expected to earn under $5 million in free agency. And there's like Sean Murphy Bunting, Emmanuel Mosley, Shaquille Griffin, Eli Apple, Mike
guys
Hughes.
You can win with,
Yes, yes. There's a lot of those guys out there, so I think that's a good call.
And real quick too, that doesn't preclude you from taking a corner. It just means that like you don't have to take a corner in the top 2 days because you don't need him to start right away. You can still take probably a very solid corner in the 4th or 5th round. Give him a year on the bench, let him play some special teams, and maybe he develops into your starter, and then you cut whatever veteran that you signed this year. So I think there's multiple ways to kind of go about that whole situation.
All right, let's talk about some of the Cowboys free agents when we get back. This episode is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all of the fat and the calories, then you've got to try Built Bar. We're getting closer to summer. We're inching our way there. If you want to get in beach shape, Built Bar will help you get there. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, real chocolate. They only have 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, but 17 grams of protein. Plus, they come in so many unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how they do it, but they're absolutely phenomenal. It doesn't even taste like they're healthy. It tastes like you're eating a candy bar. And now you don't even have to wait to get a box. Before, you had to go to built.com, which you can still do, by the way, but you always had to wait a week or two. Now, if you live close to a Walmart or Sam's Club, walk into the pharmacy section, grab a 4-bar box of the cookies and cream, the double chocolate, or the coconut puffs. If you live near a Sam's Club, go pick up a 13-bar box of some of the hit flavors, including brownie batter and churro. You can thank us later. All right, Landon, this next question from Jake. He wants to know, can you guys run through the Cowboys free agents and say whether or not you would bring them back or let them go? So I've got the list. We'll run through these as fast as we can. Jason Peters.
Yes, if the money works out and he comes in late.
I agree. Anthony Brown.
Probably time to let him go.
I would move on as well. Anthony Barr.
Probably time to let him go.
At least for now.
Yeah.
I'd revisit.
Maybe a Jason Peters situation, right?
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah.
Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, I think time is gone.
Yeah. It sounds like Albert Breer said that the Cowboys did offer him a nice contract extension this offseason, and he said no. So I think he's
looking for big money, and good for him. Go for it.
Leighton Vander Esch.
Yeah, if we can, I would like to try to bring Leighton back
at the right price. I think once you start getting up above $6 million a year is where I get a little nervous. Dante Fowler.
Fowler's gonna be interesting, right? Like I think we just saw that Brandon Graham just signed for $6 million for 1 year. So I think which is kind of close to what Fowler made last year, if I'm not mistaken. Was Fowler $5 million?
No, Fowler was vet minimum last year.
Oh, okay. I totally missed that then. Yeah, I think I'd be interested in Fowler depending on the price. I think if it's a similar deal, maybe a slight increase, I'd be on board with that. But I also think that there's going to be several other kind of vet pass rushers that you're going to be able to get in the free agency period. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Don't forget, the Cowboys also are pretty deep at edge. They also want to see Sam Williams get more snaps, and they have Tack McKinley that was sitting on the practice squad all year to potentially replace Fowler.
On top of that, if there's one thing we've seen so far, they're clearly looking at edges in this class as well. So they're not, going to shy away from drafting one if they like one.
Jonathan Hankins.
Yes, please. I got to have some kind of veteran defensive tackle presence there.
Yep. Terrence Steele is a restricted free agent. He's going to get signed. T.Y. Hilton.
I think a similar situation with Jason Peters. Like, let's see how the wide receiver situation plays out, and then maybe you make a call with him late. I don't know that he's interested in anything at this point. I think he learned a lot about how much he likes coming into the last part of the season and making some money. So I imagine that'll be a similar situation this year.
Maybe just come in a little bit earlier, Ty. Like not
maybe Christmas a little bit early,
like the next week. Donovan Wilson.
Definitely. Yeah.
Definitely. Carlos Watkins.
Yes, please. Yes. And because I think he'll be cheap. He look, I just think that Carlos Watkins is a guy who's going to be perpetually underpaid, unfortunately, and I'll take advantage of that.
Next one's tougher for me. Noah Brown.
It might be time. He
did have the best year of his career though.
He's getting I think that's actually the issue, right? He's going to get more and more expensive, and not that he's like, an exceptional player, but a veteran wide receiver who can give you snaps, who can, get feed targets, and he's an ace special team player, someone's going to be willing to pay more than what the Cowboys like to allocate for that slot of player. Yep. And I think you could go out and draft Michael Wilson in the 4th round and probably get something other.
I like it. Brett Maher.
I don't care.
I don't care. It sounds like the Cowboys might be moving on anyway. So
yeah, okay. Look, you know how I feel about kickers, man. It's like the NFL, not for long, really, really, really applies to kickers. So,
Cooper Rush.
I mean, if the money is right, and if we're actually talking about a situation where only 20% of the playbook is changing and none of the nomenclature is changing, yeah, I mean, maybe. Yeah. I just think he probably is likely going to price himself out because people are going to be willing to pay him more than what we are.
Probably. Luke Gifford.
Again, I need to see the price there because I do think that there's something to the idea of having that sort of special teams ace who is also, I mean, I'm at the point where I feel way less concerned if Luke Gifford has to get on the field and play defense than I was even 2 years ago. So I like him as a bottom of the roster special teams guy, but the price has got to be right because with all those guys, right?
Yeah, and he's just another one that I wouldn't be upset.
Is he 28? How old is he?
He's 28 years old. Remember, you drafted Devin Harper last year.
Yeah.
They signed Malik Jefferson, who I know is not a great NFL player, but he was on their practice squad all year long to maybe take that role. So just something to consider. Avante Collins.
I kind of think, I mean, just as a guy that at least they liked him a lot in the locker room, especially. So I would say maybe just, at the very least, sign him to some kind of vet minimum deal and take him into training camp and see what happens.
He is 30, which is kind of getting old for a developmental offensive lineman, but he's not going to cost anything. Like you sign him vet minimum, it's whatever. Rico Dowdle is a restricted free agent.
Keep him. Honestly, I think people have forgotten just how good Rico Dowdle is when he's healthy. Yeah. I know he's having a hard time staying healthy, but I think with this situation, he's cheap, and all the good cheap running backs that you can get that can play special teams, you probably should just collect until you have to cut them.
Last one, CJ Goodwin, who turns 53 this offseason.
That's funny. Man, like how much longer can he keep doing it? Like, the problem with me, here's my issue with this is that you're potentially looking at a situation next year where I think you have to let him go probably because you got to start preparing for life after him. And honestly, Kelvin Joseph, if he doesn't kind of step up and make some moves as on the defensive side of thing, you could be looking at next year having 2 brand new gunners on your team, and after having 2 of the very best gunners on your team. So I kind of think that, look, I'll say this: just going through this list, we cut Noah Brown and CJ Goodwin. That's a little dangerous. So I think the Cowboys should be careful here about letting go all 3 of CJ Goodwin, Luke Gifford, and Noah Brown, and what that potentially could do to their special teams units.
So between Noah Brown and CJ Goodwin, who would you rather bring back? Because I think Goodwin's going to end up being cheaper, but Noah Brown can actually help you on offense if you need him.
I honestly think I would take Goodwin because I just think that as good as Noah Brown is, and I agree that he can help you and he can do some things, the way the Cowboys wide receiver room is currently constructed, I don't need that player right now. I need more players who can make plays and be reliable pass catchers. Look, I like using wide receivers as special teams players when you can, but it's a luxury that I think the Cowboys can't afford right now.
Okay. We've got one more question about what the Cowboys should do in round 1 when we return. All right, Landon, it is March 10th. We still have free agency to go. We still have over a month and a half until the draft, but a couple of people, including Jake, want to know if you had to pick a player at number 26 right now for the Cowboys, who would you want it to be?
I mean, I could pick anybody or
No,
just
you gotta pick
anybody that's reasonable. That's 26.
Reasonable.
I'm gonna get guff for this. I feel like I really like Darnell Washington.
Yes,
I just think, and I understand the whole idea that first round tight ends and all that. No. To me,
sorry,
like, yeah, sorry, Joey. To me, like, I have a hard time with a lot of these first round. You can't draft that in a first round arguments when we're picking at 26.
Yep.
You know, like, it's just there aren't 26 first round players. I understand that you still get the fifth year option, and they understand the economics of all that. But I think that the economics of drafting a bad player at a position that has value is worse than, you know what I'm saying, the opposite. So to me, like, think you get Darnell Washington in here, and I think he immediately can help you in the run game. Immediately can help you as a blocker. I think his skill set is such that he can immediately help you as a receiver in some. You know, I don't think he's going to be like the main focus of your pass targeting by any stretch of the imagination. But the Cowboys, but that wouldn't be the case with the Cowboys anyways. And on top of that, I think you've got two young tight ends behind him that are both exceptional in that area. Like, and I think that Ferguson can develop into an absolute yak machine. And I think Hendershot is a guy that if you want to send him on deep sail routes or seam routes, like he can run and catch, and he can do all that too. I think that Washington, at the very least, can be a dominant blocker, can get you yards up the seam as a receiver. I think it's like, as far as a meeting of need and an injection of talent and offense in spots that you need, unless one of these wide receivers falls, like if Jackson Smith and Jigba, I don't see that as realistic anymore, right? Yeah. Like, so if that's not the case, and we're talking about what seems realistic at the bottom of the first round, to me, he's a guy that I think you plug and play, and it can kind of change the shape a little bit of your offense by kind of even further supercharging the run game, and then giving Dak another big target that can run the seam in a way that, frankly, we didn't have even since young Jason Witten, right? Yeah. Like, we just haven't had a guy that's a big target that can move down the field like that.
One of my problems with the Cowboys tight end room last year, and I really like that group, like, they were one of the better units on the team, is that those guys could switch jerseys in practice, and I'm not sure you'd know who the difference was. I mean, you'd figure it out pretty quickly that Schultz is the best route runner of the group, but, like, physically, they all look the same. They're all like 6'5" white guys that all kind of move the same, right? Yeah. You bring in somebody like Darnell Washington, who is completely different than Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot, and now you have something different in your offense. Where, listen, if we want to play power football and put him in line and bring Connor McGovern as our fullback, like, now we can play some big boy football. Or if you want to send him down the middle of the field and use him as a weapon that way, as a seam stretcher, he can do that. He's one of the few weapons in this draft that can help you in the run game and in the passing game at the same time.
Yeah. And I think that, that's what the appeal for me is, that he's going to be a big physical player. He's going to be a weapon in the passing game as well as the run game. Maybe not in the pass game as immediately, but I think if you do if you go through the business of getting the pass catches you need through free agency or through trade, let's accentuate that by giving me a big playmaking tight end. And again, Dalton Kincaid is another guy I certainly wouldn't be upset about, because I think he's a pass catching. It's completely different type of player. But the multi-dimensional aspect of Washington's game and the upside, the crazy upside he has as a pass catcher, I think it's a good fit for what the Cowboys want to do. And I think it would be something that would change the shape of the offense in a way that it hasn't in a while.
And the good thing is that they draft Dalton Kincaid. They don't even have to change the language in the offense, right? They're just, hey, we're throwing it to Dalton on 3rd and 6, just like we did for the last 4 years. So that part of it's really nice.
Run the Dalton.
Run the Dalton play. Yeah. All right. So I'm not saying this is my favorite pick, and I'm not even saying the Cowboys should do this. But we're going to talk about this player on Monday a little bit. Steve Avila from TCU.
Yeah.
Now, I know some people have him as a second-round player or whatever. I'm telling you, by the time we get to the draft, that's not going to be the case. But you want a guy that can play left guard right away. Let's say Tyler Smith ends up being your starting left tackle, and you need a left guard. He can do that. Well, what about in 2024 when Tyler Biotish is a free agent?
Exactly.
Oh, he can come in and play center. What about 2 years from now when Zach Martin retires? Oh, he has 1,000 career snaps at right tackle or right guard. Perfect. We've even seen him play right tackle in TCU and grade out really well. I generally don't advocate for taking interior offensive linemen in round one, but when you have a guy that can literally play 4 different positions on a team that really values position flex, I think it does make some sense.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned all that. This is a line of thinking that I was going through last night too. Is Avila really is, and it was because in preparation of our film study, right?
We won't give away all the good stuff. But yes.
I do think that Schmidt falls into that category too, in some sense, right? Where guys that can play that kind of swing interior role really help your plans moving for the next 2 years, right? Because of all what you just talked about. You need a left guard for this year, but you don't necessarily need a starter at left guard, but you need someone who, like, if called upon, would be able to step in and play. Avila can do that. Can he play center next year when I don't necessarily want to re-sign Tyler Biotish, or if we decide to let him walk? Yep, absolutely. Avila can do that for you next year as well. I think the sense that I get is that, for all the reasons that we just discussed, that how important that kind of third guard would be in this offense when you're dealing with Tyron Smith as kind of an on again, off again left tackle.
Sure.
And then, someone kicking outside to play his position in his stay, really needs somebody immediately could play left guard now. And then potentially, if you want, hey, look, like I said, Biotish is gone. Let's kick him out there. Zach Martin decides to retire. You kick him out there. I do like Steve Avila a lot, and I'm almost a little pissed that you said him, and I didn't say him because I like him so much. But I think that's fair. We took each other's picks. Maybe is what happened here. I took Washington, you took Avila.
That's fine. Again, we're going to be talking about some of these guys on Monday, so make sure you tune in for that show. But we were talking yesterday after the show. We're kind of not done. Well, we're starting to prefer the NFL strength guys that have NFL power right away, right? Because those kind of guys can come in and help you even as they're learning technique and all that kind of stuff. Steve's got that power. Like he's going to walk in day one and be one of the stronger guards in the league. I think he makes a lot of sense. And I just thinking long-term, you want to play Tyler Smith and Avila next to each other on the left side. Let's go. Yeah, exactly.
Give me that. That's a powerful left side that's going to move some bodies for sure.
Yeah. All right. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Now make your second listen to Locked On NFL Draft Show. Damian Parsons and Keith Sanchez provide in-depth coverage of the biggest NFL draft prospects with deep dives into the sleepers and hidden gems that can change your favorite NFL franchise forever. Find Locked On NFL Draft wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go check out the Locked On Cowboys podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you guys right back here on Monday.